Hi, I'm Amy and we're here on the pavilion at the Fullerton Arboretum. We're going to be having a native plant sale in a few more weeks in the fall, and so we're here today to talk about native plants. A lot of the pavilion does have native plant landscaping, so today we're going to tell you about pruning your native plants. Should you prune them? When should you prune them? Hopefully this will clear some things up. So the good news, or at least a lot of you might find this good news, is that native plants don't really have to be pruned. Unlike rose bushes or fruit trees where we're trying to really maximize the bloom and the fruiting, native plants will bloom even if you ignore them. So, however, a lot of us also do like to make our garden look a little tidier. Here on the pavilion we normally would be hosting formal events, and so we try to keep things looking a little bit more neat. And this time of year so happens to be the best time of year to prune many of your native plants. We're in a Mediterranean climate here. That means that we get a lot of rain in the winter and the spring, not really in the summer. And that means that a lot of our plants grow in the winter and the spring, and we prune them in the fall so that they'll be set up to flush with nice new growth as soon as it starts raining. So we have different native plants, big woody shrubs like your toyon or manzanita, ceanothus. We generally don't prune those a lot. If you're trying to make them a nice specific shape, you could prune them a little bit, but we don't really prune ours hardly at all. Then you've got shrubs that are more woody at the bottom, but they're not so woody up top. These would be sages. We have a lot of sages, buckwheat, the brittle bush, the desert encelia, the gray one. And these plants, we usually give them a little bit of a prune. We take off the dead flowers. You can cut some of the leaves off, but you don't want to make them too leafless. They don't like that. So we have some here that I've pruned. You can see how this part's a bit shorter than that stuff in the back that I haven't pruned yet. It still has all the flowers on it. So when you cut them, you can cut off the flowers, a few of the leaves, but you don't want to cut too thick of a stem. If you start cutting down here where it's really big and woody, they don't take that well. They may not grow back. They'll be very unhappy with you. I've even actually killed a brittle bush by trying to prune it, and then it never grew back. So just neaten it up a little bit on the top, but don't cut more than, a quarter or a third at the most. Make sure to leave plenty of leaves on it. So then we have some other plants that could take a little bit more pruning. One of those would be the California native buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum. It's just the normal buckwheat. It's very strong. You can prune it a lot and it'll bounce right back. I'm working on this one here. You can see that it's going to be like a little less than half the size that it used to be. Disclaimer though, if you're thinking, like I was thinking, that this is going to help keep your plant smaller because you're really surprised at how big it grew, it doesn't really. In the long term, it's just going to grow back the same size that it was. So you really don't have to prune it this hard, but if you need to for some reason, you're tenting your house or something, it can take it. It'll be okay. So what are some things that you could cut completely down to the ground? We have some big bench grasses like wild rye. Tends to get really brown in the summer, and if you just cut it completely down, it'll grow back looking refreshed. Same thing is true with the California coast sunflower. That's the green Encelia californica. They get really straggly looking over the summer, and the new growth is so much prettier, so I usually cut those down to like a foot, and then they grow right back. There are a few things for which fall's not the right time of year. For example, if you have any deciduous trees, like we here on the pavilion have a lot of sycamore, you're going to want to prune those sycamore while they're leafless in the winter. And there are also a few kinds of grass that are called warm season grasses, meaning that they do grow in the summer. Those, such as blue grama, a lot of people replace their lawn with a meadow of blue grama. If you're only going to mow that once a year, you're probably going to want to mow it in the early spring so that it'll flush with new growth in the spring. But other than that, we have a lot of deer grass here that we usually just rake with a stiff rake. Instead of cutting it, we just kind of pull out the dead material with a rake. And if you have any other native plants at home that you feel like we didn't cover, or if you have more questions, then feel free to let us know and we'll be happy to help. Thank you.